here. Glad you're sitting up. Good topic. Okay? Okay. You want me to give him like a BP or like some data? Maybe that music? Love you guys. Good night.
A single pirate captured more than 400 ships across 2 oceans. Not Blackbeard, not Henry Morgan, not any of the names Hollywood turned into Halloween costumes. His name was Bartholomew Roberts. The sailors who survived him called him Black Bart, and the ship he commanded, a vessel he renamed the Royal Fortune, became the most feared warship. ship in the Atlantic world. Not because it was the biggest, not because it carried the most guns, but because the man standing on its quarterdeck was smarter, faster, and more ruthless than every naval officer sent to stop him. The British Royal Navy deployed entire squadrons to hunt him down. Colonial governors offered bounties that could buy a plantation. Merchant companies rerouted entire trade fleets just to avoid the waters he sailed. And for 3 years, none of it worked. So how did a reluctant Welsh sailor, a man who never wanted to be a pirate in the first place, become the most successful one who ever lived? And how did one ship, renamed 4 separate times, terrorize a stretch of ocean that spans from Brazil to West Africa? To understand that, we need to start with a map. Picture the Atlantic Ocean in 1719. On the western side, you've got the Caribbean, the coast of the American colonies stretching from New England down to the Carolinas. And further south, the Portuguese colonies of Brazil. On the eastern side, the bulging coast of West Africa, where the slave trade funnels human cargo through fortified ports along the Gold Coast, the Bight of Benin, and the Niger Delta. Now draw a line between them. That line is the Atlantic Trade Triangle. Ships loaded with manufactured goods sail from Europe to Africa. In Africa, those goods are traded for enslaved people who are packed into ships bound for the Caribbean and the Americas. In the colonies, sugar, tobacco, rum, and raw materials fill those same ships for the return voyage to Europe. Every leg of that triangle is money. Sail from Europe to Africa. In Africa, those goods are traded for enslaved people who are packed into ships bound for the Caribbean and the Americas. Money. And every leg of that triangle in the colonies, sugar, because these merchant vessels, loaded to the waterline with cargo worth fortunes, are slow, lightly armed, and crewed by men who are paid almost nothing. That triangle was Black Bart's hunting ground, and the Royal Fortune was the predator that patrolled it. But Bartholomew Roberts didn't start as a predator. He started as prey. Born in 1682 in the village of Casnawyd Bach in Pembrokeshire, Wales, John Roberts grew up in a world where the sea was the only way out of poverty. Wales in the late 1600s offered 2 futures for a boy without land or title. You could work the fields until your back gave out, or you could go to sea and hope the ocean didn't kill you before you earned enough to come home. Roberts chose the sea. By his mid-30s, he was an experienced merchant sailor, competent enough to serve as third mate aboard a slave trading vessel called the Princess. It wasn't glamorous work. Slave ships were floating nightmares, packed with disease, death, and the screams of people chained below deck. But it paid, and Roberts was good at navigation, good at reading weather, and good at keeping his mouth shut. In June of 1719, the Princess was anchored at Anamabu, on the Gold Coast of West Africa, loading its human cargo for the crossing to the Americas. Roberts was 37 years old. He'd spent more than 2 decades at sea. He was tired, underpaid, and watching younger officers get promoted over him because they had connections he didn't. That's when the pirates came. A brigantine flying no colors swept into the harbor and opened fire. The ship belonged to Captain Howell Davis, a Welsh pirate who'd been terrorizing the West African coast for months. Davis and his crew overwhelmed the Princess, captured everyone aboard, and gave Roberts the same choice every captured sailor received. Join us, or we leave you here with nothing. Roberts didn't want to join. He said so openly. According to accounts from the period, he told Davis that piracy was a vile trade. But he also recognized something that every honest sailor in 1719 already knew. The legitimate maritime world treated its sailors like disposable tools. Pay was miserable, conditions were brutal, officers beat crewmen for sport, and if you survived 20 years of it, you got nothing. Not a pension, not a word of thanks, not a single guarantee that old age wouldn't find you starving on a dock somewhere. Pirates, on the other hand, voted on their captains. They split plunder equally. They had articles, written agreements that guaranteed every man a share and a voice. It wasn't freedom in any romantic sense. But compared to the floating prisons of the merchant marine, it was the closest thing to democracy that existed on the open water. Roberts joined, not out of enthusiasm, out of math. And within 6 weeks, that decision changed the entire Atlantic world. Howell Davis was a competent pirate, but he was also reckless. In July of 1719, barely a month after Roberts joined the crew, Davis attempted to kidnap the governor of the Portuguese island of Principe off the coast of West Africa. The plan went wrong. Portuguese soldiers ambushed Davis and his landing party. Davis was shot through the stomach and died on the beach. The crew was stunned. They'd lost their captain in a foolish land raid, and now they were anchored off a hostile island with Portuguese guns pointed at them. They needed a new leader immediately. The vote happened fast, and against every expectation, including his own, Bartholomew Roberts won. Why? Because in 6 weeks the crew had noticed something about the quiet Welshman. He didn't drink, he didn't brawl, he didn't make rash decisions. But when Davis asked for navigation island with Portuguese guns pointed at them, they needed a new leader immediately. The vote happened fast, and against every expectation, including his own, Bartholomew Roberts won. Why? Because in 6 weeks the crew had noticed something about the quiet Welshman. He didn't drink, he didn't brawl, he didn't make rash decisions. But when Davis asked for navigation island with Portuguese guns pointed at them, they needed a new leader immediately. The vote happened fast, and against every expectation, including his own, Bartholomew Roberts won. Why? Because in 6 weeks the crew had noticed something about the quiet Welshman. He didn't drink, he didn't brawl, he didn't make rash decisions. But when Davis asked on the western side, you've got because in 6 weeks, including his own, 6 weeks the crew had noticed something about the quiet Welshman. He didn't brawl, he didn't make rash decisions. But when Davis asked on the western side, you've got because in 6 weeks, including his own, 6 weeks the crew had noticed something about the quiet Welshman. He didn't brawl, he didn't make rash decisions. But when Davis asked on the western side, you've got because in 6 weeks, including his own, 6 weeks the crew had noticed something about the quiet Welshman. He didn't brawl, he didn't make rash decisions. But when Davis asked on the western side, you've got because in 6 weeks, including his own, 6 weeks the crew had noticed something about the